Hello everybody, this is the first time I've ever narrated any of my videos. It's a simple reason. What I'm describing here is the taking out of the frets of an electric guitar, turn it into a fretless. There's an awful lot to say and I thought it'd be easier to just speak over the video of the slideshow, and we'll show you a bit at the end where I played the thing for the first time pretty much. What you're seeing in front of you is the victim. This was a Rockstar Stratocaster copy, which is a very loose phrase in this case because it really was quite a bad machine. I bought a couple of other instruments first which I really thought they were rather too good. One was a Fender Starcaster and a Yamaha EG121, which are quite nice. So I didn't want to mess those up just in case, so I really found a bottom dollar thing which really has some pretty serious issues on it, if the truth be known. So it's a pretty good looking machine, but I'm afraid looks can deceive. This is the sort of instrument that's so poorly made that you really don't want them to be out there. Anybody that gets into this guitar playing is really going to be put off by something like this, trying to get nice sounds out of it, and physically very, very difficult, if not impossible to play. The fingerboard was very badly edged, rough cuts and sharp frets. The nut was very, very high, though it seemed to be a pretty good material, but yeah, really not very nice at all. I did notice when I checked the truss rod that it was actually in what you might call reverse mode, so it was forcing the neck into a bit of relief. That's something that became apparent a bit later on as well. But here is the biggest issue, is the neck socket was really badly cut. Like, how on earth they managed to machine cut something out of parallel with the top of the guitar, I can't imagine, but somebody really went to some effort to achieve that one. It really was a bad problem. So the nut slid out reasonably well. It was a good fit actually. It just knocked out, it just touched in with a couple of drops of super glue, nothing unexpected there. So actually a pretty good component within the guitar. So the other thing whilst we're looking at that photo is the terrible tuners. Every one of those nuts was loose, and the string trees, the top one, is totally in the wrong position. That's going to have to be moved. Look at the quality of the cutting on this headstock. It's actually quite a nice piece of wood, a tiny bird's eye, but the edge finishing was pretty much absent. So here I'm starting to take the frets out, which is just a matter of pulling them out with some flush cutting pliers. I've got another pair of like nipper types as well, which aid some of them, but most of them came out fairly readily, just with a little bit of heat from a quite hot soldering iron. Dab of solder to help transfer the heat onto the fret, and just let them cool a bit and ease them out gently. And the damage to the fingerboard wasn't too bad, they all came out. There's the other pliers I referred to at the top. Yeah, no real dramas there. I don't know what this wood is. That up on woods, but it doesn't feel like it's rosewood. Something else. So there, close up of the fretboard. Really, it's only the impressions from the little parts of the fret wire that are designed to dig in to keep the frets in place, which have left their mark, but very tiny amounts of chipping out. This is just looks like filler, but it's not. It's just where it's been rubbed down so that I can get a nice curve onto the neck, which was just a little bit more than what was on there actually. I see a lot of guys on fretlesses go for fairly flat necks, but this neck to start with, I don't know what the radius was, but it was gotta be up between 12 maybe plus. It was really flat. So knocked a little bit out of that, and then dust has gone into the fret slot, so you can start to see some of the issues with the wood that's chipped out in a couple of places. So There are some glue ends at the very ends of the slot, so I need to dress those up with this old razor saw. Just pull in from the outside, reverse teeth on these saws, so help to clean the slots up beautifully. And that's the end result of that. It's ready to go, really. One thing I wanted to do was to not have visible fret slots as such, but of course I wanted to keep some idea of where the fret positions were, so I thought of this idea of just putting fret markers, position markers, on the very top edge of the neck, and to control how deep they went across the fingerboard I just clamped a straight edge and used that to butt these little inserts, which is just a stirring stick from a coffee shop. They were put in with cyano super glue. It's all very, very quick, straightforward, no dramas. Trimmed down, they all looked reasonably even, so I was quite happy with that. Now to fill these slots, I really just wanted to get on with it, so I used a hard wax. It's one of these fine surface fillers that would normally be used on very tiny blemishes in natural burr and that sort of thing. It's a detailing thing really, but it works immediately. As soon as it's cool, it's ready to work with, so yeah, it's just a matter of getting the job done more quickly. It will do for now, but I don't think it's going to help in the long term. So I'm using the super glue process on this one. I've had a little play with it, and there's a few things I've learned. There's plenty of videos on YouTube showing you where you can do this sort of thing, so go out there and have a look. The only key things that I would say is put the layers on as thinly as possible, try to do it in as few strokes as possible, and I went through a process of doing about 5 coats and then just flattening it back gently just to take the high peaks off, but not really right back to flat until maybe 10 coats had gone on after a couple of sessions of that. And then repeat the whole process from a perfectly mirror flat board straight to repeating the whole thing again. Gave me the confidence that there was enough there to work with. So this is the second application, so the second lot of 10 coats, and what you're seeing there in the way of that surface is just the wiping action more than anything, because it really picks up really quick. But you know, it's one type of glue I used. Others may have a sort of better work time or something. Don't know, early days. Point is that it seemed to work. It's given me a really nice finish. I did notice it settled a little bit overnight, so I gave it a final flat down and just a couple more coats the day after I originally did this. It was okay. It was reasonably good. But significantly, I did notice that the wax was already starting to behave differently, and so the fret lines were showing up a little bit, but that's just something to keep in the future. I'm doing this to be able to make a fretless from scratch, so I'm not going to be worried about how the slots are filled from a guitar that's been modified like this again. So having got to this point, then it's time to start working on the body, and just taking the back cover off revealed a little bit of a mess. You can see the earth wire is just tucked underneath the solder tag on the spring claw, and the spring is at the bottom of the picture here, which in the next picture is at the top just there. You can see where it's in hard contact with the body, so the whole thing was screwed down tight anyway, so it wasn't going to be moving, and none of that was helping. It shows how much they saved on time when they built this thing. It's quite apparent that they put the scratch plate onto the body and used the scratch plate as the drill guide to drill the holes. Drilled the holes, and without cleaning out at all, they just put the screw straight in. So all the swarf, all the wood dust from the drilling got trapped underneath the scratch plate and was just left there. So normally you'd router these sorts of situations for a neck socket like this, but I'm I happen to have a little mini machine, so using a mini machine to me is a bit more sense. That's my trade. It's much more easier to control and gives a really tidy result. You just don't get the spindle speeds that you might get from a router, so you just have to keep your feed rates down a little bit. But you can see here that it's starting to take a lump out towards the nose, hence the socket slopes down towards the back of the body. And all I did was take out enough just so that it left the bare remains of the original depth, deepest depth, and just minimised the amount of material that was removed. It gave me a little bit of back neck relief. This is with the truss rod completely loosened, so that was a little bit unusual, and starting to think about why the truss rod may have been tightened the way it was when I first got the guitar. I used steel blocks to make sure that the board is flat during sanding, and since the finishing process had occurred, then it really did turn into this slight deformation. So clearly the neck was moving around a little bit, but it's in the scope of adjustment, so that's okay to work with. The body, whilst it was all in pieces, it was really badly painted, and it's a plywood body, and I thought the very least, whilst it was like it was just buff over it quickly, and it gave me a half decent finish, which is okay for this little cheap experiment. This is something I often see. This is the protective film that's on the scratch plate, which when you take it off, those knobs are so difficult to get off sometimes that that piece of plastic gets trapped underneath and eternally grates on the bottom of the knob, either on the tone and volumes, and I very often have to remove those. So with a little tool I got the knobs off and cleared all that stuff up. This is the spring assembly put back in place in a sort of starting setting. The claw's been released back to give me a little bit of movement on the bridge. Clearances have been cutting there for the springs, and of course the earth wire has been soldered to the tag as it should have been in the first place. So turning attention to the nuts, I needed to just take a lump off the bottom of this, so I did that evenly to start with, about 2.5 millimeters, and I'll set that up in more detail when I get the final strings on. It turned out looking reasonably tidy. Nice piece of material actually, just a plastic, but you know, one of those hard types that seem to bear fairly well. So putting the thing back together again after just a bit of an overall clean up of the bridge and other bits and pieces, it's looking okay. Kitchen lights here, but we'll get a picture of it out in the daylight. There we go. So yeah, it looks alright from a distance. It doesn't bear closely peering at it, to be honest with you, by any means. Terrible body shape, so bad. There we are, one fretless. So from here, what I really wanted to do was to just let it settle a little bit. So I put the original strings on that came back with the guitar there, and rusty things that they are, and just to help let it settle back before I did any detailed setting up of the intonation and the action and string height of the nut, etc. But before I do that and learn how to play the thing properly, I just thought it'd be interesting to see what these round wounds are like, flat wounds are going to be going on ultimately, and just get that down on tape and video and see what it's like. So here we are.